Rich Dad Poor Dad is an extremely popular book. It's been around for over 25 years, and many consider it to be the starter book for financial freedom. So, a lot of people, like my uncle, my dad, were telling me that this is a really important book to read. I saw it online. People were saying, oh, read this book. It's important if you want to become rich, make money. So, I gave it a read. So, I understand a lot actually now why this book is so popular, and I guess why people consider it the starter book for financial freedom. You don't have to have any knowledge about how money works, how stock works, or like about how anything works to understand what Robert Kiyosaki, the author of this book, is saying. He doesn't structure the book of like how you would learn something. He structures the book through a story in which he talks about his childhood growing up, how he had two dads, how he had his rich dad and his poor dad, and his poor dad was his actual dad, with his rich dad being his friend's dad. He told the stories of how when he was growing up throughout middle school and high school, of how him and his friend used to sit with his rich dad. They used to go to his boardroom meetings, this and that, and how the differences between what his poor dad versus his rich dad encouraged. And that's kind of like the basic things of the book, is like what rich people teach their kids versus what quote unquote like poor or middle class people teach their kids. He talks a lot about, how him and his friend used to learn all these lessons from his rich dad, and how he was teaching them so that when they grew up, they would become business owners and they would have employees under them, rather than what his poor dad wanted was for him to go to college, get a good degree, and then become an employee himself, because that's what his poor dad was an employee, while his rich dad was a business owner. I think another really interesting aspect of the book is like the idea of like how money works, because his rich dad talked a lot about, how the differences in how poor versus rich spend, and how the rich will find ways to get around paying taxes. And I think that was pretty sweet. Like the book just kind of teaches you basic legal methods, or like, it gives you like the starter formula for like how if you wanted to avoid, taxes, income taxes, how rich people, they shield their money throughout their different corporations, this and that, and how it helps them pay less taxes than poor and middle class people who only have, earned income from their job, and you can't avoid earned income taxation. But Kiyosaki basically talks about, the basics of investing in real estate, stocks, bonds, and pretty much anything that can make you money that you don't have to additionally work for. Like his whole biggest thing is that, the poor, the middle class, they work for money, while the rich have money work for them. I think it was a really good use of my time, honestly, reading this book. Kiyosaki is very vocal that he thinks that the American school system is pretty screwed up, that, kids aren't learning the things that they should be learning. I think it's really important too that, I read this book now rather than in my late 20s, 30s, because I think one of Kiyosaki's other main messages was that like knowledge is really important. A lot of what he's getting at is that like people don't have basic education of what to do with money once they get it. And if you read this book, you understand some of that stuff beforehand, I think it'll help a lot. But I think like the ultimate takeaway from this book was basically knowing the difference between assets and liabilities, understanding how a balance sheet works for the rich versus the poor and the middle class, investing more in assets than you do in liabilities, and essentially figuring out, legal ways to shield yourself from taxes and other things. And I think like the overall baseline is that you don't want to be an employee, you want to have employees under you, or you don't want to have to go work additionally for money. You want to basically be making money without you having to, physically go into your 9 to 5 and work extra hours for it. In the end, I think that this is a really good read. I also agree that it is an important read. It was my first time ever reading, like a personal finance book or a book of this kind. I think that it's a lot easier too that if you listen to the audiobook, I'll link that down below, because it's hard to, actually physically sit down and read because you get busy. So the audiobook was really nice, and I think that if you have time to listen to it, while you're working out, driving, whatever, I think that it is a great use of your time. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.